Overcoming self-doubt, finding motivation, balancing content quality with available resources, and procrastination, and more. These are the struggles I have faced, especially now as a content creator. I'm truly grateful that this podcast gives me the chance to connect with listeners who may be navigating through similar experiences. You're not alone. We're all in this together. Hey there, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to Thrive with Eliza, where we talk about music, life, and personal growth. I'm Eliza, your host, and I'm so excited that you're here. So, today we're diving into four creative struggles many of us face and the lessons I've learned along my journey. So, whether you're just starting or have been at it for a while now, I hope my story resonates with you. So, let's get into it. Number one, navigating self doubt and finding your voice. So, before you decided on something like becoming a content creator, have you ever thought, I don't like the way I look in front of the camera? I'm not as good as the other content creators that I'm seeing on social media. Or it makes me cringe listening to my own voice. Or I don't have a home studio or a soundproof room to record. The neighbors will hear me ramble. What if they're what if they're going to make fun of me? Or what if I receive a negative comment? Or I don't have a high quality equipment to create videos? Or what if no one cares about what I create? Trust me, I've been there. Starting was tough because I let those doubts hold me back. And looking back, I wish I hadn't waited for so long. As much as I wish I could change those negative thoughts in the past, there's nothing we can do but learn from the experience and become a better version of ourselves. Here's what I've learned. Your voice matters. Even if it's not perfect, it's uniquely yours. I'm so glad I came across self-help videos and podcasts that inspired me to start anyway. When you juggle between work and personal projects day by day, it takes constant reminders and motivation to be on track with what you truly wanted to be in life. Now, this doesn't mean that I no longer deal with those inner criticisms. Sometimes those thoughts just come out of the blue, especially when a situation requires me to be at my best. This is where I remind myself of what truly matters. How important is this to me? When the answer was clear, I stopped worrying about perfection and started focusing on progress because, my dear, time is truly gold. If you're like me, who's in my 30s, don't wait until you're 40 to start that personal project, that business, or whatsoever. If you're in your 20s, just start doing it now. The earlier you start at something, the more opportunities you will have to grow your business or personal projects, and the more lessons and experiences you will gain along the way. This reminds me of my aunt sharing the parable of the talents. So in the parable, the the master expected his servants to invest the capital he gave them rather than burying it. The master considered burying the talent to be a loss because he believed that capital should earn a reasonable rate of return. We should share the talents that God has given to us in good ways, rather than not using it. We'll never know what wonders it could bring to our lives if we don't. Number two, building confidence as an introvert. Some of us introverts find podcasting and vlogging as a way for us to express our thoughts and to share our creative sides to the world in our own unique ways. It is one of the few ways where we can freely express ourselves without the fear of facing a live audience, right? I am one of those who are not quite very comfortable yet with performing in front of a crowd, so I am gradually conquering that fear here online. I know that online presence is not an exception when it comes to criticisms, but it's a good way to start for me as an introvert. I am truly grateful that I got the chance to do podcasting aside from the usual music content that I do because most of the time I tend to talk less and observe more when I'm away from the camera. While this podcast is still a work in progress, every episode that I do helps me build confidence a little bit more. This also helped me embrace imperfections and love myself more the way that I am. And oh, speaking of self love, Leve, the famous Icelandic singer, has hugely helped me love myself more through her songs. You should listen to her song called Letter to My 13-Year-Old Self. It was beautifully composed and you might relate to it, especially if you've been through the same situation. Let me know your thoughts about it in the comments. Going back to the topic, being an introvert shouldn't stop you from spreading goodness to the world, regardless of the ways you do it. As for me, showing up online has been my go to activity for growth and finding purpose in life. Because who knows? By sharing valuable content, it could reach the ones who need it most. So, if you're like me, I encourage you to embrace your unique strengths and take small steps if you're considering similar projects like mine. Number three, overcoming resource limitations. To be honest with you, one of the things that made me doubt about starting my personal projects was the limitations that I faced with gear, setup, and of course, budget. Side note, I quit my 9 to 5 job by the end of 2022 and started all over again as a freelancer. It was difficult. It was a difficult decision, and I wasn't ready enough at that time. Sure, I had set aside some funds to survive the first few months of being self employed, but it wasn't enough to start funding my content creation journey. And it's never easy when you help provide for the family. But I had to take a different path to save my overall health. Some might probably say, nah, this you didn't have to experience all of that and just stay with your 9 to 5 job and have job security. Or this you just had to endure the struggles because it's hard to find a job during these times. Or you're too soft and sensitive. You could have just ignored those thoughts and kept working, or else your 7 years of service will be put to waste. And so on and so forth. But guess what? I am so grateful that I was brave enough to let go and take risks, for it led me to more opportunities. I learned a lot of good things and gained memorable experiences that made me who I am today when I took a different path. Now, I may be able to make another episode specifically about transitioning from the usual 9 to 5 job to freelancing because it's quite long. But now let's go back to the topic. I started to record videos with what I currently have: my old Android phone, a cheap condenser microphone, a desktop computer that I bought while I was still working my 9 to 5 job, and I utilized natural light by the window when I got the chance to shoot in the morning. Later on, a portion of my earnings from my freelancing gigs I set aside even if it was just a little amount. I tend to watch out for sales, markdowns, until I decide to make a purchase. And then, little by little, I invested in better gear to help improve the quality of the content I produce. And also save time in recording since a huge slice of my time is spent on freelance work for me to fuel my personal projects. Also, I tend not to buy new stuff unless it's really needed. Because when you are self employed, you will need to manage your finances wisely. You will need to consider the urgency and the importance of buying new stuff before deciding to check out. You may need to ask yourself first, is this important? Is this urgent? As someone who basically started singing and playing musical instruments without formal training, but aspires to become a professional singer or a theater artist, it is essential to improve my singing and acting skills. I have always planned to get into voice lessons, but there were more important and urgent things to spend money on. So instead, in an attempt to improve my singing without spending a fortune, I look for free vocal lessons online, joined a choir, and constantly look for singing inspiration. Now, that isn't solely the reason why I joined the choir. I believe that It was one of the ways that I could give back to God and to the community. I'd like to emphasize that great content doesn't require perfection. Most of the time, all it takes is becoming creative and resourceful with what you have and the dedication to producing valuable content, especially to the ones that need it. So, if you think that having limited resources is stopping you from starting that personal project of yours, give it all your best and just start anyway. You trying to get your message out there is what matters than having the perfect tools. Number 4, learning to embrace imperfection. Have you ever had these moments where you say, "Oh, I don't look good in this video," or "My face is too big. Please do it again," or "I'm not as pretty as the other girls out there. What if what if they don't like me?" Or "This is cringy." There's this pressure of making each piece of content flawless because other creators do it so well. But we also need to take into consideration the process behind those amazing content that's out there in the wild. Do they have a team of editors and assistants to help them make flawless content? Is content creation considered a serious business to them? How long have they been creating content? How did they start as content creators? Some of them might have the same humble beginnings too. Some of them might have faced the same insecurities as I did when they were still starting out. But these successful people, these successful creators, do have the same thing in common: perseverance. Perseverance despite the imperfections, because imperfection is part of the process, and we can only overcome by embracing these imperfections and not worrying about what other people might say. I do believe that as long as you strive to be at your best, if your intentions are good and you try to bring value to your audience, the right people will appreciate it. Even a cringy moment or a minor mistake can be a stepping stone for improvement. These little things keep our feet on the ground. What about you? I'd really appreciate if you'd share stories of times when you embrace imperfection in your own creative projects in the comments. You'll never know how sharing your personal stories would inspire people who are going through the same. So that's it for today's episode. I believe we can further talk about things in the next episodes, but for now, please bear with me as I try to come up with a schedule for our podcast. Nowadays, it's been challenging to keep up with an uploading schedule given the hectic yet productive season that we're in. So please stay tuned for the upcoming episodes of Thrive with Eliza. Thank you so much for listening and for being part of my journey. Remember that the challenges are what makes the journey meaningful. So let's keep going. Feel free to reach out and share your own creative struggles and wins. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to this channel to be the first to get all the latest episodes and videos that we create. Let's make this a space for mutual support and growth. See you in the next episode. Bye for now.